Hello, all, and welcome back to a new episode of Movies and Us, a weekly gathering place filled with conversations about movies, stories, and connection. My name is Jennifer Hahn.
And I'm Sarah Callan.
And today we are going to be reviewing the film Master and Commander from 2003. This has been part of our homework that we've been doing to review and discuss a lot of 2003 movies because we're potting over with our friends at the Revisionist Almanac to cover the 2003 Academy Awards movie year. And today we are joined by a very special guest. She's fresh on the pod here. Louise is joining us to talk about Master and Commander. Louise, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Louise. I spent a lot of time talking about movies online, and I'm thrilled to be here.
Love it, love it. You know, it's, I suppose I should say Master and Commander : The Far Side of the World, because I didn't read the full title. It's a very long name, very long title. We're excited to talk about this movie together with you, Louise. This will be a good time. There's lots of things that have been done and choices made in this film that I think we'll dive fully into. But first, IMDb summary. Sarah, do you want to kick us off?
All right. During the Napoleonic Wars, a brash British captain pushes his ship and crew to their limits in pursuit of a formidable French war vessel around South America.
All right. Brash British.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite some fun alliteration.
Yeah.
Very fitting. Let's start off with our one-sentence summaries and movies in us tradition. Louise, do you want to share yours first?
Yes. Mine is the ultimate dad movie.
Yes.
Yes,
really.
It is.
It just checks all the boxes. So I was like, that's what it is.
Mm-hmm. And you know what I love? That we're three gals here reviewing Master Commander. We got things to say about this movie, folks. Yeah. Sarah, what is your one-sentence summary?
My summary is, it's dangerous out here in these watery streets.
Mm-hmm. Very dangerous indeed. Very dangerous indeed. Mine's a little bit longer than I usually do, but it'll hopefully make sense. My one-sentence summary is, a crew of men are out on the open water with the occasional beach days, but mostly stalked by an unnamed menacing creature of the sea, hunting them for blood. No, this is not a Spielberg shark. It's a French war vessel, of course.
Well played.
All right, well, let's dive in. We're going to include a kind of high-level roundtable, our thoughts about Master and Commander, what our relationship to the movie is pre this most recent watch. We won't spoil this movie quite yet, but it did come out in 2003, so, you know, it's been many years. Go watch it and then come back
time.
and listen. Yeah, it's been some time. So, Louise, I'm curious to hear, had you seen this movie before this most recent watch? And where does this fall? And you're like, this is one of my favorites. This is kind of a movie that I watched and forgot about, or kind of where you fall on that spectrum. And then, yeah, high level thoughts from this most recent watch about this movie.
So I had never seen this film before until I watched it like a month ago. I have a small group of friends and we get together and do movie nights. And every month we have like a theme, and our theme had been like, we were watching all the Pirates films and we had an extra day. And I was like, oh, Master and Commander kind of fits into this seafaring theme. And so I was like, I've never seen it. And my husband loves the sound design in it and had been telling me about it. And I was like, okay. And he's an audio engineer. So anyway, he's really interested in sound in films. And so I was like, okay, I would love to see this. I feel like it's something I would like. I like Peter Weir's work. And I love Russell Crowe and Paul Bettany. And so it was really fun to watch this movie. And I was like, oh, this feels like a dad movie, and in the best way possible. And I love dad films. Anyway, they're some of my favorites. So I'm not saying that to diss it or anything, but yeah, I had never seen it before. And I really, really enjoyed it.
Nice. Yeah, I'm excited for us to talk about the sound design in this film because it is definitely like one of the places that this film shines so much. But yeah. All right, Sarah, what are your thoughts about Master and Commander and kind of your relationship to this film pre this most recent watch?
Yeah, I had never seen this movie before. It's not a Sarah movie, so I just never sought it out because I was like,
This is not a
this is
Sarah
not
movie at
this is not for me. Um, and I this movie was fine for me. I think a
all.
lot of the production design is absolutely phenomenal. The sound design, the score is doing some great work in this. So like
Yeah.
technically there's a lot of really good stuff in here, but I struggled to connect with this film
Mm,
and like be interested in this film. I was just kind of like, okay, are we done yet? Are we done blowing each other up? Like, can we go back to like exploring the island because that was a little bit more fun for me.
yeah.
So this was an interesting one to watch because it is very well made, but I think
Yeah.
I am the problem in that I just wasn't interested in this story. This is not a me movie, but I'm glad that we watched it though cuz it's always interesting to watch a film that you don't normally gravitate to and being able to see like the good parts of it and be able to like identify those things even if you aren't particularly enjoying the film. So it was just like an interesting like intellectual exercise for me.
Where you're like, but I could see that and I can see that. And that's some good filmmaking. And yeah, yeah. Kind of appreciating it for what it does well versus feeling like sucked into the movie. It's a fascinating like headspace to be in, I think, when watching the movie. This is not a Sarah movie at all. Nothing about this. And it become a Sarah movie over the course of the movie at all. It becomes less of a Sarah movie as the film unfolds. Um yeah, I hadn't seen this film either until this most recent watch. And kind of building on your one sentence summary, Louise, I think I'm just a dad, is what I'm like gathering over time. Which it was like dawning on me. And this happens in so many dad movies where I'm just like, I think I really like this. And I need to think about that a little bit, you know? Um, the first 30 minutes to an hour of the film I think are okay. There's a lot that I wish the film leaned into a little bit more with the main character of Jack and kind of exploring who he is as a leader. I would have loved to see like a little bit more. We get that more in I think the like third act of the movie. But on the whole, I think this is like a vibe movie. Like you're just out at sea, you got a mission, and you're doing some things to accomplish the mission. And for the most part, like you're just spending time with this crew. Even their goal isn't fully clear the whole time of what they're trying to do next. They just find themselves in situations and need to figure out how to get out of it and come up with a plan. And I think that's a like fascinating way to write this movie. Without the incredible set design and production design on this movie, I don't think this movie works at all. It works because you feel immersed into spending time in this place. And it reminds me a lot of kind of the beginning, early days of movie going, where people went to the movies to like travel, essentially, to go to places that they never would be able to experience. And this movie kind of feels like that. There's a little mini story arc, kind of, but for the most part, you just are kind of immersed in this world for 2 hours and a half, and then you get to go on your merry way. And I think that's a fascinating part of why the production design is essential to this movie. I think if you do some CGI stuff, this movie does not work at all. Yeah. All right. Well, let's give a spoiler alert. If you haven't seen Master and Commander, this is your spoiler. We are about to dive into this film. Go watch it. It is available, I think, to rent on a bunch of the streaming platforms and whatnot. So go watch and come back and listen to the rest of our conversation. Okay, well, let's dive in more fully now that we have full free reign to talk about all of the aspects of this film. What were some of the things and maybe choices that this film makes that you found really fascinating, compelling, and kind of you were thinking about after the film ended?
I think my favorite aspect of the film, beyond
Yeah.
like the technical sides of things, was the relationship. I don't remember the characters' names, which is terrible, but between Russell Crowe and Paul Bettany's character, they really are such a huge part of what make this movie interesting to me. And I think part of what makes it a dad movie is seeing this sort of healthy masculinity where they're like being friendly but not competitive with each other ever. They're
Mm,
both really powerful in their own way, in their own jobs, and they're both really good at what they do, but they're never like competing with each other. But they
mm,
still aren't like just getting along the whole time. They have arguments and they're being honest with each other. And I find that really interesting, especially in this setting that none of us have experienced or have access to, where everything is really important and their entire survival of the ship is basically based on these two men. And so the decisions that they make are super important. So
mm.
anyway, I just love their friendship, and I love that they play music together. Like
Yeah,
that's such a tender way of spending time with someone. Anyway, I love
love it.
them.
And I love that both of those characters, we get to see their weaknesses too. You know, we get to
Mm.
see um, Paul Bettany's character. I think his name is Steven. In my notes, Russell Crowe is Russell Crowe and Paul Bettany is Paul Bettany. So like I
Yes.
didn't even write down the characters' names.
Yeah.
But I love that we get to see their weaknesses too. Like Steven is not well equipped to be on a boat. Like he doesn't
No.
know what's going on. They're having this conversation about what's going on out there and what they have to do in their maneuvers and stuff. And he's like, "What is that? I don't understand." Or like all of the other like boat people are making jokes and he's just like, I don't get it. And so I love that. I love that we see Russell Crowe's character, I think his name is Jack, we see his like pride and how that gets the better of him. So we see their weaknesses too, that they're not just these like perfect dudes who always do their job well, but like sometimes they make mistakes
Yeah.
that can cost them, that could potentially cost somebody else too. And so I like that the characters are a little bit more complex. There's a little bit more depth there than honestly I would have thought from a 2003 movie about some dudes on a boat. You know, I would have
Yeah.
expected them to be like pretty two dimensional, but there's some depth there, which is really nice to see.
Hmm. Yeah, and their strengths are so complementary to each other. You really get to see that Russell Crowe obviously is like the natural born leader. He has the charisma, he has the emotional intuition to know how to lead an entire ship's crew. But Paul Bettany's character has like the book smarts, and that is highly valuable too. You could argue that it's the thing that turns the tide for them and unlocks this creativity for their final plan is him studying these creatures. And I love that aspect of this because I think you could argue maybe this is a little notch above a dad movie because a dad movie would be like, we don't care, let's yell and bad pump our chests and go take on the French. And there's a little bit more here. There's strategic thinking that comes from him studying nature. Like I love
Yeah.
that detail and how creativity can come from kind of the most unexpected places that seem to be just a silly side whim or a side passion, but actually that connection that they make of like, oh, wait, we can use these tactics in these places. I just love to see the way that like creativity is depicted in this movie in kind of the most unlikely places, in the most unlikely circumstance, too. Yeah. I also really struggled to unsee these actors uh, from their roles. Like the whole time, I'm like, look, there's Russell Crowe with long hair who's doing his Russell Crowe like beefy, charismatic magic thing. Like I think that's an
Mhm.
interesting part of this movie is like the star power of it all. I can't help but think that this is like 3 years after Gladiator. How did the film studios think about drawing crowds in? Like, y'all fell in love with this character as this type of person and role in a movie. How do we recreate some of that magic to draw you back in again? Because in a lot of ways, like the demeanor of his character is similar in a lot of ways. There's kind of a hard-heartedness from the outside, but he's got like this heart of gold and he knows how to lead people. Like, we love to see that on the big screen. And they kind of seem to be taking that same formula that was so successful and figuring out how to package it again. Here's Russell Crowe as a brash British general, you know?
Yeah.
So that's a fascinating part of this movie is imagining if they cast other actors that weren't as prominent. Does this work better? Does this work less well? How does that change our viewing experience? What about you guys? Like, how did seeing these actors in these roles contribute to your experience of the movie?
I mean, I think they fit really nicely. They could have cast other people for sure, but if you think about that time and place, putting Russell
Mm,
Crowe there makes a lot of sense. He's also Australian, as is the director, so that would make sense that they would want to work on something together. And I don't think they had at that point. Maybe they had. Anyway, I could be forgetting something, but the film industry in Australia is not very big. And so it makes sense to me that they would want to work together. And he's just coming off of Gladiator, which is a really, successfully commercially as well as awards wise. And so if you were to like make the film today, I don't know who that person would be. And I also think it would be the lesser for it just because of the effects and all that stuff, because it wouldn't be as, I mean, we've seen in the more recent Pirates of the Caribbean films how they choose to film those versus the ones in the mid 2000s. So I don't think it would work as well for that reason. But I also don't know who you would cast. Like we don't, at
yeah.
least as far as I can think of, there's not really someone like that now who would be his age who could fill that same type of role.
Mm-hmm.
His age as it would have been in 2003, I guess, not
Yeah.
currently.
Yeah. And I think what's also interesting about that is like Russell Crowe is Russell Crowe in everything that I see him in. It
Yeah.
is what it is. It's Russell Crowe. Um, But I think it's interesting that this movie, if I'm remembering correctly, did not do very well at the box office. Like
Mm-hmm.
this film was setting up a sequel that never got made because this just didn't do that well. So I think that's also interesting.
Yeah.
Coming off of Gladiator, Russell Crowe's face so big on the movie poster. He's such a big deal in this movie, and even his star power wasn't able to draw people to the theaters for the studio to make their money back on this one. And so it's just another interesting piece of the whole like art and commerce thing. And they thought that they had a surefire bet with this one that would become a whole series, and it didn't for whatever reason.
I think it's Pirates of the Caribbean's fault, personally. It came
Which
out the
I'm not
same
mad at
year.
because that movie
Yeah, no, I
rocks.
I love all of the I love the trilogy. I don't really love the other two, but I just think that movie really captured the same essence of like sea adventure
Yes.
plus a little sprinkling of the supernatural that Master and Commander just doesn't have. And so people were like, "Oh, we already saw that movie." Like I could see, most people only go to the theater like a couple times a year, and so they're going to pick something, I don't know. And I feel like,
Yeah.
I guess I was too young to have been paying attention to the advertising for both of these films, but I imagine they were similar, honestly, because they're
Yeah.
both take place on the ocean. And I'm not sure which came out first. Probably, I imagine Master and Commander was a holiday release, if I remember right.
Mm.
But I just think Pirates of the Caribbean captured that same feeling and got more
Mm.
people into the theater. And so people were like, "Oh, I already saw that movie, so I'm good. I don't need to watch uh, another of the same thing, even though they're
Mm-hmm.
not the same." Like, anyway, they're just similar.
Yeah. And you're right. This came out in November of
Yeah. Okay.
2003,
I'm
whereas
like, because
Pirates came out in the summer.
yeah,
So,
that makes
yeah,
sense. So people were done
that's a
with
good
pirate
theory.
ships,
Yeah.
and they were like, "We're
Yeah.
good. We saw, Captain Jack Sparrow, who's really fun, and there's actually women in that film, so that helps
Yeah.
too."
That helps too.
So
Also, Pirates is just having so much more fun. There's like nearly a same whole sequence where they like do battle with the ship at the end and do like have a whole
Hmm.
board and take over the ship plan. And like Pirates has so much fun in that sequence. And you're right, there's this whole other dimension of like the dead and the curse and all that kind of stuff that we get to see. So, this one's a little bit more self serious.
Yes. Which I think is why it is a dad film, because apparently it's very historically accurate to that time. I wouldn't know because that's not an interest
You're not a
of
dad.
like history. Yeah, I'm not a dad. I have read a book about that time. And I remember
Oh,
thinking while I was reading it, I wish I could visualize. I hadn't seen Master and Commander at that point. I was like, oh, this is just that book, essentially, but made into a film, adding a little bit more stuff, and
yeah.
it seems, and I've read at least, that it is very historically accurate. So if that's your thing, if you're interested in that time period, that can be really exciting. But for us
Hmm.
who, I mean, I'm assuming a lot about you guys, but for us who are not as interested in that time period of history, it's
Yes.
kind of like, okay, I guess that's how they would do that.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's the same group of people that comes out of a movie that's like based on history and will go to the internet and be keyboard warriors and be like, well, actually, the way that the like embroidering on that costume isn't quite historically accurate. The pattern is a little bit different in its floral. Like you're like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Artistic freedom.
Yeah.
Same people.
Exactly.
Yeah. One thing that I felt while watching this movie that we kind of started touching on, I think, in our opening section, is just it's nice to see a movie that commits to the production design. Like I think I just have a soft, tender spot in my heart for any movie that chooses to do the investments and the work to actually build these ships and film them on like open waters and to film them in water tanks at the studio and like create replica ships. I think that adds so much to the experience of this movie when people are running around and people are running around in front of you in the foreground and in the background. Like it feels like all of those humans are really running around and yelling and all this kind of stuff. And I think that like you can't cheat the human, and I think we feel the difference. And I reveled in that while watching this movie because it's so easy these days, and so many of the films these days, which I lament all the time on this podcast, they just do the CGI stuff. I get it. It's cheaper, it's more efficient, costs less time, costs less human effort. But to watch something like this from the 2000s that did it fully and committed all of that effort, it's just satisfying to see again. So that warmed my little heart. The commitment to the production design.
Yeah, especially with the historical accuracy in mind too. They're not just like creating, a fantasy world where there's no rules. They're,
Mm,
taking from historical times and like, I don't know, I just love, you can tell that they did a ton of research, and these are based on books as well. So I
mm,
think that also helps a lot with the characterization, and like everybody's roles on this ship are really clear. And like, because I feel like in other films, they would just combine a bunch of the characters together so that you're seeing the same like two or three people throughout the whole thing. But they had, people who are in charge of the, different parts of the ship. And that really added to the realism too. So they're not just like combining everybody together. And having the children on the ship too. Like
oh my
that
gosh.
was a thing. That was a thing that happened. And like I don't feel like that often gets included because they're basically being trained to become, you know,
Mhm.
to serve on ships. And so they start when they're young. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting because they kept that element in there where they're trying to teach the children how to do the jobs and like giving them more responsibility as the film goes on. And I think that's just an interesting element that other films of this type just don't include because they're like, oh, we don't want to work with kids. That's too hard. Because it is
Mm-hmm.
hard. Working with kids is really, really difficult.
Mm.
Well, and I love that the kids were included too, because that automatically raises the stakes too. Because you're
Yeah.
like, there's little children on board and there are cannonballs flying everywhere. Like, we don't want to see the little
Right.
kids be murdered. Like, this is awful.
Right.
So I love that inclusion because it immediately raises the stakes of like, buddy, you are the captain of this ship. You got to keep it together because you got little kids on board. Just don't be out here being foolish, endangering these children. Oh, so good. The other part of the like production design that I was really captivated by, in addition to like the boats and all of that, is the costumes. There are so many different costumes in this, and
Mm-hmm.
like everybody has their own different like rank and the different kind of like divisions within the Navy. I don't know any like war military words, so this is all wrong. But I love how everybody had their different outfit and they were all distinct from one another,
Yes.
and these little details that were included that are specific to the character. Then they do a whole costume change. I don't know why they had like extra costumes just chilling in their back of their boat, but like that's cool. So just the intentionality and the sheer number of outfits that we see throughout, and the fact that they're pretty historically accurate, I think is quite a testament to, again, just how good the production design in this film is.
Mm. And I thought I was fascinated that they included so many sequences and screen time showcasing like medical surgeries, you know? I hated every bit of it. I have to say, it was terrible. I was like, thank God for modern medicine. Oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh. Like we start the movie with the young boy going through surgery, getting his arm amputated. And I think that, to your point, Sarah, around stakes, like adds so much stakes. We really feel like these men are getting injured and there's real pain and cost to them. Let's show you it. Huzzah. Like um terrifying. Oh, it's honestly terrible. But I think that adds to how much they're putting on the line to be here. I think so many times in these like battle sequences, we almost cognitively become numb to like bodies flying and limbs flying. But from the beginning of this movie, it grounds you in this is real men that are putting their lives at stake and are having to be brave and having to put themselves in danger and really experience real pain. And just in case you forgot from the beginning, we're going to include a whole sequence with Paul Bettany's character again, where he does self surgery. Also,
Yeah.
casual, what a sleigh! But I think all of those I was so surprised at how long those scenes last as well. Like they really indulge in showing you this stuff, which potentially is the film's way to like really hone in on that groundedness that is what makes this film so great too. In the historical accuracies, but also in the like experiential accuracies of what it's like to be like on a ship at war.
Yeah.
Well, and then even after, like, you'll see people, they'll get like a wound. I don't know, it was the dude who becomes a captain in the end. But like he had like a cut on his cheek throughout most of the movie, and you see it healing over the course
Yeah.
of the film. It goes from a cut to a
Yeah.
scar. And so I loved those little details too, of like they're actually paying attention to this is happening over a period of time, and how would a person's body respond to these wounds that they got during combat over the course of the film. So again, those little tiny details I think help add to
Mm.
this film, and you can tell just how much care and intentionality went into this from the production side when you see little details like that.
Yeah, it's so true. um, let's talk about the sound mixing because this is something that Louise, you brought up, which I think is it's one of the things that this film like really, really shines in. And also that your partner also seemed to be so captivated by and really appreciate
Right.
from like a technical perspective. Yeah, tell me your
Yeah.
thoughts about kind of the choices this film makes from the sound editing design and then how that maybe contributed to the experience of being in this movie.
Right. Right. So what's interesting too, so this is this film came out back when sound was two separate categories at the Oscars, and it won one of them.
Mhm.
It won the Sound Editing Award. Sound Mixing went to Lord of the Rings because that was the year that oh, what's it called? Return of the King kind of dominated and won every Oscar it was nominated for. So Master and Commander really only won the two awards that Lord of the Rings wasn't also nominated for. So sound editing was one of them.
Mm.
Let me find. I have a note here of what he said. So his
Nice.
thing. So my husband is a audio engineer, and so he is always paying attention to the audio of films. And so I asked him kind of like, what about this film do you love the sound for? Because that's how he
Mm.
sort of introduced this movie to me. It was like, I love the sound in
Ah.
this film. And I was like, okay, cool. I want to listen to what you have to say about this and let's watch it with that in mind. And he told me that he loves the way this film uses silence, which I think is interesting because often sound design, we're paying attention to the loud stuff, the big flashy stuff. And he says specifically in the first scene, when the friendship comes out of the fog, there's a shot where Russell Crowe is looking through, what are these called? The spyglass. Anyway, and you see the flashes, but you don't hear anything because that's how it would work in real life, right? So they are
Mm.
coming, and so he sees the flashes, he knows something coming, and then when it impacts is when you hear the sound. Because sometimes sound designers will be like, "Oh, we need to indicate that something big is coming," but it's eerier almost to not hear it on impact, and then immediately are dealing with the aftermath of being hit and all that
Mm.
stuff. So there's kind of like the calm before the storm, essentially. And so I just think that's such an interesting um, perspective because I feel like we're always paying attention to the loud stuff, but silence really does a lot too. Um, so yeah, that's what my husband had to say about it. And I agree. I think
Mhm.
that that's really important to make sure to use those silences so that the loud stuff feels more impactful. So it's not
Mhm.
just constantly loud. Because we all know those movies that just kind of keep at the same level the whole time and you're just exhausted by the end of it. Like, anyway,
Yeah.
so this movie is good at not doing that.
Yeah, yeah, that contrast is so
Mm.
good. The other part of kind of like the sound that I really appreciated is kind of the opposite of the point that you were just making, Louise, is how loud it is as they're just doing normal boat things. Like you would
Yeah.
expect it
Yeah.
to be loud in a battle. That makes
Yeah.
sense. But just, the day-to-day sailing, maintenance, whatever, they're in a storm and you feel how loud that would be. I had never thought about what it would be like to be on a giant sailing vessel in the middle of a storm, and it would be really, really loud and
Yeah.
disorienting. And so the fact that the film was able to recreate that, I mean, it is overwhelming in some of those scenes where you're just like, oh my gosh, like I can hardly think because this storm is so loud. And just creating so much empathy for these dudes who are just on this boat. This is where they live for like years at a time. So
Oh,
I thought that that
Yeah.
was really cool to see in the non-fighting moments just how loud it would be, and that almost is like an empathy inducing thing, rather than just a like let's be loud thing.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because most dad movies, you gotta have the loud, like yelling sequence of men yelling and charging at each other because that's what you do, or like cheering for race cars going around a track, something, engines roaring, something like that has to be loud. But it's interesting that like what's most loud is almost like yeah, the nature, and while they, especially in that storm sequence, are trying to figure out how to work together. I love that you can barely hear them like yelling instructions at each other to collaborate. So from a like design perspective, the sound of the ocean is literally drowning out their ability to know pull that way or pull left or right or
Yeah.
up down. They can't hear each other at all. And I thought that was really fascinating too, is getting to hear the storm and the waves literally drown out their ability to like do their task. Whereas in another movie, the storm's raging, but you can still hear them yell the commands because it's cool to see them work together. But I'm like, oh no, I can't hear what guy to the left is telling guy to the right as they're trying to like keep this thing afloat. And that was really cool to see. The film also just like allows those sequences to last really long too. Like you don't get to cut out of it really quickly. You just are stuck there with the rain whooping in your face. And I felt like I was getting sopping wet in a lot of the
Yeah.
sequences too, as you hear it like whipping at you and whipping at the camera. Really, those were really cool too.
Yeah, and if I was doing some reading about the sound and how they went
Mm.
about doing it, and I guess they took the novel and scraped through for any sound descriptions, which I think is an interesting way to like adapt a book.
Oh
I
yeah.
think book adaptations are a fascinating exercise anyway, and this one is interesting because not only are they adapting like the characters, the setting, but the sound design was like, I'm going to look at the book, highlight anything that I hear. Like they mentioned specifically, hold on, where did that? I put that. Um, just like the way that the cannons hit the ship, they describe in a certain way, or the way the ship is
Mm.
moving is described in the novel in a specific way, and they're trying to like recreate that noise. And I wonder if some
Yeah.
of the noise that we hear just as the ship is doing its regular stuff comes from that exercise, like, and they're like, oh yeah, you can barely hear what other people are saying when there's a storm happening, of course.
Mhm.
And there's no, way to get out of that because you're in it, you're stuck there. So
Mhm.
I think that I never heard of anybody doing that before, which I think is kind of an interesting way of approaching your sound design when you're adapting something like this.
Mm.
Wow.
And
Yeah, and like shout out to the book too of like being so detailed and being able to like really create this world so well to be able to like pull those details into that the film adaptation.
mhm. Yeah, that's so fascinating. And what a way to really like go deep and study and put in that extra effort. Again, I think it's just really neat when the effort we feel really comes through to the screen. It's like this like reward for the creators that like it was all worth it. Robert Eggers is a creator that's very much like this. Like he'll go so deep into like Viking lore and whatnot to create like the Northmen, and you can really feel the difference. And I just think it's neat to see that that effort, that investment really comes through and like really
Yeah.
pays off. Like you mentioned, just the amount of intentionality that went into this. Yeah, so good, so good. I while we're on the topic of sound editing, I really loved the point that your husband made around the use of silence too, which I think is a credit to the way that like the creators and the directors have chosen to pace this film. Sarah is very familiar with this experience of being like fatigued in battle sequences of just like the law of diminishing return and starting to feel numb and then being checked out. And I think it's neat that the place and locations of where we cut to within a big battle sequence are constantly changing so that the sound isn't just blaring like clanging for too long. We get to cut to like Russell Crowe's character going through the back parts of the ship, and it's a little bit quieter, or he's just a standoff between two men. And then we go back to the big hordes that are fighting. And so, just the intuition that the film had to know and to cut away to those quieter moments so that the loud parts could feel really overwhelming when you merge from the bottom parts of the ship back into the hordes. You are kind of hit with this wave of sound too, because you've just experienced at least a moment to breathe or a standoff that can finally come to fruition when you can like come out again. So I think the pacing of this felt really well done, where we get the quiet that then makes the loud feel even louder.
Another piece kind of related to that is I loved the intentionality of the score as well.
Mm.
Um, and it's all this beautiful classical music that you're hearing, the way that when our two characters are playing together, then that will transition us into the next scene and carrying those melodies forward. And then the piece of the music that I really, really loved is that anytime they went to the Galapagos Islands, we hear Bach's cello suite in G, which is written for the cello, which is what the doctor plays. And he was so
Right.
excited to go to the Galapagos Islands so that he can study and all of that. And we hear that happen twice. And so speaking of the intentionality of this film, like all of those little details are in here. So if you're paying attention, you're gonna pick it up. But even that choice to use this cello song for something that means so much to this doctor, I thought was a really nice little added bonus there.
Yeah. I love that they extended the historical accuracy to the music too. Because, like, in my head,
Yeah.
I was like, I love that it's all music from the time. Because if they were to make this film about themselves, like, say, hypothetically, they had the technology to do it, this is the music they'd be picking. This is what they're familiar with. This is what they know. Like, I
Yeah.
just thought that was such a fun extension of the historical accuracy part of the choices in what they end up keeping in the film, what sort of fabrics they're using, all this stuff. And it extended to not just the tactile things you see on screen, but also in the way that they pick the music.
So good. Yeah, that's so true. And the score is used sparingly, which I was really happy about. Maybe because the sound design was so good that they were like, yo, let
Mm-hmm.
this stuff shine. You know what I mean? But
Yeah.
it's so easy in a film like this to really indulge in the swelling strings and all of that kind of stuff. But it's the, again, storm sequence that I found to be so uh, strategically used when the score is deployed, because for most of that sequence, I mean, the ship's going down, you don't hear much of the score. You see the dude that's like stranded out, and again, no score, but it's when they start using the axe to cut the rope and let him essentially die
Mm-hmm.
out at sea, the score comes in and it's so emotional, and the close-up
Mm-hmm.
shots, the ask, and like really leaning into the drama of that emotional gut punch. I think that score added to the moment, instead of by the time we get to that moment, you're kind of overspent on the emotions of knowing what's about to happen. And so I
Yeah.
just love that we didn't get this long sweeping sequence of a really emotional score leading up to that moment, but it actually starts when the axe comes down on the rope for the first time as they have to cut the rope to let him go. And oh, that moment was really, really well done. Great pairing of all of the filmmaking like tools in the toolbox together to really like land in a punchy emotional moment. So that was really good.
And I think like the added gut punch of all of that is that his friend is also contributing to this guy being just left out to sea. And so I think the film doesn't like linger there for a really long time, but you know that his friend is it's just it's what he's got to do. It's we got to save everybody else. And so you also feel the weight and the heartbreak of that without the film leaning into it too much to create melodrama. So it's just that
Mm-hmm.
right balance of we know how heartbreaking this is for everybody, but especially his friend. uh yeah, it's rough.
Wait. Okay, before they choose to do that though, I was cracking up because homeboys are from the ship yelling at the swim, swim. He's trying, okay? Like
Yeah.
the man just tries to
What do you
swim.
think he's doing?
The storm is going back to the sound design. The storm is raging. Like, I love that. Like they are so earnestly like really trying to like encourage him, and
Uh-huh.
they are not thinking right. Like you're on a like sinking ship in the middle of a storm. You're not really thinking. It's their natural instincts to be like, you got this, you know. But it's kind of cool to see this dude like sweeping, being swept by the ocean. I'm like, I think he's trying, guys. I really think he's
Yeah.
trying to get back
What
to
do
you.
you think he's doing out there?
Yeah, what do you think he's doing? Oh, it's so funny. It's a very emotional moment. I was just like, guys. Just cracking up to myself watching this at home. Okay, any other big like choices, moments, or even little things that you notice that this film chose to do?
Oh, I wanted to mention that I feel like movies like this, you can kind of get lost in them
Mm,
explaining like sea stuff. As someone who's not interested in being on the ocean, especially on a boat like that they explain what's happening clear enough. You don't always know exactly what they're saying because they're using terms that I don't understand, but you understand enough through, I don't know, the dialogue or just what is insinuated by what they're saying, that you're able to follow along with what's going on. Because I feel like with a movie like this, especially one that's historically accurate, that could very easily lean too far and be like, oh, they're going to understand this because they care about the historical accuracy, but they're making this movie for everybody, right? And so they want to make sure that everybody's like keeping up with what's going on. Because sometimes you can get lost in like exposition and just technical stuff like that. But I feel like,
mm,
and I think part of it is too, is because the characters, for the most part, are pretty strong. That you can just tell by the emotion they have behind what they're saying, kind of what's happening, where they're
mm,
like nervous about something or they're excited about something. You may not know exactly what they're saying, but you can kind of gauge it by paying attention to how they're feeling about it, which I think is, and obviously the dialogue is a huge part of that because you could very well just get lost and be like, what in the
mhm,
world are they talking about? They're using a whole different vernacular that I don't understand. Because of that, I'm being left behind. So
mm.
I really appreciated that they kept us up with what was going on. And I don't know if that was more due to, the probably the script is a huge part of that. And just keeping us along for the ride because yeah, again, it could very well just like leave us behind and just be like, you don't understand what, I can't even think of a phrase. Anyway, what this means, okay, too bad. Bye.
Mm,
Yeah, yeah, this movie trusts the audience enough to know, okay, we're gonna give you enough that you'll get the gist of what's going on, but you'll be able to follow us. We don't have to like handhold you through this entire thing. Like, just
Right.
come on, hop aboard. We're going to get through this somehow. You'll know ish what's going on, and that's enough. And I love that point that you made of they were so intentional in the history and the production design, knowing that we would pick up on those things even if we don't know the details, and
Yeah.
that's enough. And
mhm.
that's satisfying for us as the viewers because we would get bogged down and bored if there was a lot of exposition or there was a lot of like, this is how you boat, like that's just
Right.
get we would check out of that, but they maintained that balance really well.
Which must have been really hard to do, to your point earlier, Luis, around adapting a book that I'm sure is super captivated by all those details. And for the audience, that book is the target audience, for it. I'm sure it's all in the book. So even their like restraint to keep a lot of that out and choose, like you mentioned, pairing it with emotion to feel like, I don't really know what they're saying, but I just know that like Russell Crowe is frustrated because something went wrong with a ship thing. Okay, that's all I need to know. And for the people that know the details, it's also probably satisfying for them to be like, I know exactly what he's talking about. But the restraint to not include the explanation and then pairing that with the emotions of like emotional beats is, I think, really smart for this movie to do. And I think also at a higher level, the movie knows that we love an underdog and we love Russell Crowe. And kind of that's all that matters too. Like the ability for us to buy into this crew, I think like is really easy and really fast because we have a charismatic leader that seems really competent, that has a good heart, that cares for his men the best that he can. And they're an underdog against the French that have like, and I love the scene where the opening of the film they talk about how the French war vessel has like X number times the number of cannons and it's faster and like I have no idea how like what they're describing about the ship design, but all I heard was it's bigger, better, and faster. And so we're screwed unless we get to figure out something. And we love to root for an underdog as an audience, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, totally.
One of the things that I really loved that this film chose not to do is cutting to the French war vessel. I thought it was just so cool to see that we literally barely ever meet them. Honestly, even by the end, I would argue like we haven't really fully met them. And I think that is such an interesting choice because you would expect that there would be a more constant cutting back and forth of seeing the enemy ship and what they're scheming. This is a battle, right? So cut to both sides and how they're going to thwart each other and their plans. But we spend probably 99% of our time with this British Navy crew. And I think that's such a fascinating choice that we don't get to see the other side scheming. So it really feels like this sea monster almost like, and they describe it like this like ship of the sea that's stalking them. They use this language that makes it feel like this unnamed being that's like out hunting them and they're trying to run away or to figure out how to conquer them. But that was really cool and just different from what I would expect from like a movie about war where you typically get to understand both sides. The foe is like the shark Bruce. Like we never know when it's coming. We just see kind of hazy in the fog, a silhouette, and we're like, oh no, it's coming. So I think that's a like interesting way to frame this movie, almost like a creature feature in a weird way, where the
Yeah,
creature is the French war vessel.
right. I think you're totally right because they treat it almost like it's this mythological, to lean back on pirates, right? Where they're like
Yeah, true.
literally have mythology. I think pirates really leans into like they truly believe that there were mythological things happening in the ocean because they didn't
Mm,
understand always what was going on. And this sort of
mm,
takes the actual mythology out of it, but like puts it in a realistic setting. And so you're like, yeah, I can see how that would feel like this creature that, and they call it like the devil and like
bullshit.
all this stuff. And you're just like, in reality, it is just another ship, but the way that it's interacting with them feels almost magical in the way that it's able to
Mm.
creep up on them, how fast it's able to move. And I just think using the verbiage of the time where they would be thinking of it as a mythological creature essentially is really an interesting way of framing the main antagonist of the film.
Yeah, they even, like, call it the phantom too, and you feel that, like, sinister presence lurking, you don't know
Yeah.
where it is, but you know it's somewhere, and so you feel that sense of tension and fear, especially as they're talking about it and all of those mythological properties they're, uh, putting on this ship, and it's in line with some of the other, like, superstitious things that you see on the ship too, like the whole Jonah thing, which
Yeah.
eventually leads that dude to committing suicide. Like, you understand that this is part of how they see the world and how they're making sense of the world. There's this, like, superstition that they have, and I I mean, when you have a boat sneaking up on you like that, like, I mean, I'd probably maybe think it was a phantom too. So I
Yeah.
love I love that they use these different devices, but it's not making fun of how they believe or how they're
Mhm.
processing through information, but it's adding additional color and meaning and context to how they're moving about life and how they're making sense of what kind of seems like an impossible situation.
Yeah, and I think it goes back to how like immersive this movie feels that you feel like you're there. Honestly, by the end of the 2 hours and 30 minutes, I feel like I've lost my mind a little bit too. So I can't imagine like being on this ship stuck at sea, like
Mhm.
you mentioned there, for potentially years of a mission. And I'm sure like not all is right in the head after that, experience. And you have to almost try to find some ways to explain what's happening to you. It's like such a human desire, a natural human instinct to like try and find some purpose, some meaning into all of this, uh,
Yeah.
to understand what's happening to you. And when you are so much at the mercy of the sea and nature, like you kind of do lean into these mythological, spiritual ideas to just cope with the kind of deranged experience that you're having. I also find it like they talk about the enemy ship as if it's like a creature, a mythological force, but it's also neat to see the way they describe their own ship and personify it as a she. I think at one point in the storm sequence, one of the members goes talking about Russell Crowe, like he knows the ship, he knows what she can take. Like they talk about
Right.
her
Yeah.
like it's their like valiant steed, which for all intents and purposes it is the thing that
Yeah.
will carry them, it's a thing that will protect them. And they have this weird I don't know, parasocial relationship with their own ship too, which is fascinating to see them constantly mention and talk about in discussions together.
Yeah. There's a funny moment that I just remembered while you were saying that, where they're
Yeah.
repairing the ship and they're repairing like the woman on the front, and I'm like, that's not that's not important really, like to the ability of this ship to sail the ocean, but that
Yeah.
was important enough for them to take, from their reserve of wood to repair the, I don't even know what you would call that, but the woman on the front of the ship. Like, I loved that moment, and it kind of made me laugh because I was like, that just seems so not important. But the fact that they didn't and kept it in the film says a lot about the relationship to the ship and how much they're like, yeah, we'll care for you because you care for us. It's kind of like a symbiotic relationship where
Yeah.
they're like, because you take care of us, we'll make sure to keep you repaired and like all this stuff,
Beautiful.
even on the things that aren't affecting us directly, because that doesn't
Mm,
really matter. Like it, but it does, show how
spiritually.
much they care about the ship itself. Yeah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah, I had the same thought, especially when they're like repainting her. I was like, okay, how many different gallons of paint do you have in how many different colors? And they're just like in your, is this like the Mary Poppins bag of a ship? Like, where have you had all of this stuff stored? I don't understand. So I need a
Right.
tour of this ship because I need to understand where all the supplies are. What are we prepared for here? Because they're pulling out costumes, they're pulling out paint, like they are
Right?
prepared.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they need some outlet. Yeah, it's the Mary Poppins
Yeah,
ship.
it's arts and crafts and home repairs. You
Right.
you gotta let off some steam somehow.
Yes. Need something to work on. Okay, any other last big things about Master and Commander before we wrap?
I
Or we all
wanted
just
to just briefly touch on the ending. It was actually
Oh
like one
yeah.
of the parts that I really loved about this film is that Russell Crowe didn't get his man, and he was tricked in the end. And I find that really fascinating. Obviously, that's setting up a second movie that never came to be, but I think the fact that this is a standalone movie makes that ending even more interesting, because
Mm,
we see our heroes and they are so valiant and we expect that they have won the day, but they really haven't. They like half won and were half tricked. And so I find that to be really interesting, especially in a dad movie, in a movie like this about a war. You expect your heroes to win everything, and he doesn't. He
mm.
missed something and he was tricked. And I love that little detail.
Especially because they tricked the French too,
Right.
So it's kind of like
Right.
you thought you outsmarted us, but we had one little thing waiting for you too, so it's not going to be that easy. It also just is really neat because it pays off the setup that starts the film with like Jack Aubrey's pride and this endless pursuit of glory and purpose. And so it kind of feels like the film's thesis is like, it's an endless pursuit to try and find that and the adventure of it all. It's a kind of honestly kind of hopeful ending too. Like even when he's tricked, they're kind of like, and we'll keep going because adventures await. So, which is very pirate like. So it's fascinating to think about this movie as a pirate movie I think that's like an interesting framing, Louise, that you've introduced of there's a lot of parts of this and the nature of it all and the spirit of it that does feel in line with a lot of the pirate life and like even that ending. They're like,
Yeah.
cool, more adventures for us. We'll see what the next chapter holds for us. They're not
Yeah.
forlorn and then like crushed about it. They're like, all right, more things for us to do. I feel tired for them already in advance.
Right.
Want to go home or lie on a beach in the Galapagos, please. Yeah. All right. Well, this was our review and discussion of Master and Commander: The Far Side of the World. You can find it available to stream on multiple streaming platforms. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Movies and Us. And a big thank you to you, Louise, for joining us for this conversation. It was so fun.
Yeah, this was really fun. Thanks.
Where can people find more of you and connect with you more, your content on the interwebs?
Yeah, so I'm Cozy Louise, technically, on like Twitch, YouTube, basically everywhere, TikTok, all that jazz. I talk about video games, cozy games, as well as talking about movies and films and just stuff that I'm watching. So that's where you can find me.
Love it. Love it. We'll include all of that in the show notes. Make sure to go connect with Louise and follow more of her on the internet. This was so fun. What a spirited conversation about this dad movie. Like, I love it. We really gave it everything. It's so good. Well, our name, Movies and Us, sums it up. We're all about movies and the powerful ways we can connect with each other and the world around us. This podcast is about all of us and our shared stories, so everyone is welcome here, and we're so glad you spent time with us today. You can subscribe to this podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you tune into your favorite shows. Drop us a rating or review, letting us know what your favorite Russell Crowe moment from this movie was. You can connect with us on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at Movies and Us Pod, or email us at moviesanduspod@gmail.com. Check out our website, andusmedia.co, for the latest on Movies and Us and our other podcast, TV and Us. We'll be back very soon with a new Cinema Legacy poll reveal, so check that out very soon. We hope you have an amazing week, and we'll talk again with y'all very soon.